Welcome to the April the 29th, 1997 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that in the past and continuingly are making history in and around Grand Prairie. We're very privileged today. This is our history tape number 305. And we have a very wonderful couple that are longtime Grand Prairians on the set today. First of all, it is my honor to present Mr. Dean I. Dawley, and welcome to the set, Dean. We're glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Ruthie.
Yes, we're glad.
Appreciate it very much.
We're so glad to have you here, captive, all of a sudden, aren't we?
Okay.
Yeah, and beautiful Miss Peggy Dawley, so glad to have you with us, my dear.
Nice to be here.
All right. This wonderful history tape we're going to talk about today will sort of commemorate the many things that you have done for Grand Prairie and the surrounding area. And if you would, look out into your camera right here to the left and give us your genealogy. If you would do that, Mr. Dawley, tell us a little bit about your early beginnings.
I was born in Elmer, Oklahoma. My parents were both school teachers. My father and mother both were taught almost 50 years in West Texas and in Arkansas. So education was something that was number one in our household. I have one sister, Gwen Zimmerman, who lives here. She's lived here for a number of years. Her husband is deceased. He was with the Corps of Engineers.
Yes.
And she has two children, both who graduated from Grand Prairie High School. And I have two children, Vicki and Randy. Both of them still live in the area here. Randy lives in University Park, and Vicki lives in Grand Prairie.
All right.
And so we have two grandchildren to keep us busy most of the time.
Well, I would think so. All right, now let's get back to your parents. I'd like their full names and your mother's maiden name to complete this genealogy, okay?
My mother's name was Pearl Dean, pardon me. She was born in Arkansas, and my father, Arthur Edmund Dawley, was born in Arkansas, and they both were teachers early in Arkansas before they moved to Texas.
All right. So they made a sort of a semicircle from Arkansas to Oklahoma and then on down into Texas.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Well, they should have really been riding herd on you and made you very, very smart, and all of a sudden now you're famous. That's great. That's wonderful. Where did you go to elementary school then?
I went to elementary school in Odell, Texas. It's a little town close to Vernon, Texas on the Red River.
Yes.
And I went to elementary school and high school there.
All right. When you went to Odell, Texas, in elementary school, let's go back just a little, and was there a favorite teacher or a mentor or someone besides your parents that were teachers that really did inspire you during those days?
I had a number of teachers. I had a math teacher named Mr. Nixon, and I had a number of other teachers that in the high school and the junior high and grade school who gave me inspiration.
All right. When you were in high school, were you into academics, athletics, and who was the favorite, and what did you do? How did you shine in high school?
I was basketball.
Oh.
This was a little town that played basketball 12 months out of the year.
Oh my, how wonderful.
And every day, 8, 10, 12 hours of basketball was something I did. That was the main thing for all of the kids. We finally got tennis courts, but for most of the years, it was playing basketball was something that...
You must have had a wonderful admiration then for your basketball coach. Can you name drop a little?
His name was Byron Curran.
Yes.
He was, after he left the teaching profession, he became a Texas Ranger and went up and became a captain in the Texas Rangers after that.
And if you'll take us from high school then, what inspired you to choose a college out in the West Texas area?
It was Texas Tech was the college which I went to, and it was fairly close by. I knew a lot of people who went to Tech, and it was a place in which I could stay in the dormitory and get home every month or so.
Yes, yes.
And it was a very, very good school there.
Yes, and while you were in college, did you formulate your life the first couple of years in college or take basics and then decide that you wanted to be the mentor of the world?
I took the basics, and but I went to college when I was 16, And I only stayed 1 year in college, and then I enrolled in the Navy. So I was.
Oh yeah, we had a break.
Had a
we're
break.
we're going to leave you now. We're not going to get past the college 1 year in college, and we're going to get back to the Navy in a minute because we want to pick that up. But we're going to have to give Peg a little equal time.
I believe so. Please do.
His is much more interesting.
All right. If you'd look out into your camera and tell us a little bit about your family, your parents' names, and your brothers and sisters, if you'd like to name drop them.
Well, I think this is so interesting to start with because his mother was so into genealogy, and you're bringing some of this up.
All right.
Well, my parents, I have one living. My father's been dead about, I was like 29 or 30, I guess, when we lost him.
And his name?
Neil Reuben Slappy, S-L-A-P-P-E-Y.
Okay.
Very unusual name. Never
Yes.
see it in a phone book.
And your mother's
My
father?
mother is 93. Her name is Jill Faye Slappy, and they live in Vernon.
And what was her maiden name?
Her maiden name was Jill Faye Adair, A-D-A-R.
That's good.
And my brother's deceased. He's 2 years younger than me. He had diabetes and a lot of coronary artery problems, you know.
And where were you born, Peg?
I was born in Vernon, but I also lived in Odell.
All right.
We knew each other.
Yes.
And I just laugh when I talk about it, when I hear him say basketball was all there was to do. It really just about was. And they finally let us skate on the tennis courts.
Oh,
Two
wonderful.
cement tennis. Oh, we thought that was wonderful. And the
And-
girls had a I was on the volleyball team.
All right. When you went to grade school, were you in Vernon or Odell?
Odell.
You were
We
in
moved to
Odell?
Vernon before I graduated. I graduated from Vernon, but I went most of my years in Odell.
In Odell. Oh, that is wonderful.
And he thought he was so much more mature than me.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, boys are that way,
do
aren't
you
they?
know why?
Why?
His parents, being superintendent and first grade teacher, let him skip a couple of grades, I think, so they wouldn't have to leave him home with a sitter. So he was not that much older than me. He thought he was because he
Yes.
was up higher.
Yes.
But he just kind of act, you know, high and
Yeah.
going by, you know. He says,
When you were in high school, did you have any favorite teachers? And you played
Yes.
volleyball?
Yes, I loved my athletic coach. Coach Naylor, wasn't that the one? And Nixon,
Yes.
George Nixon. And yes, they were very central in our lives. And we used to go on the bus to tournaments and things all over the county. And that was a big outlet for us.
Yes.
I
Well,
was on the tennis team too. I was very athletic. I was on
Yes.
all the sports because that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
We didn't have football.
I was going to ask you how you met, but you met in school.
We
didn't
met in
Yeah.
school, but we didn't date or anything. Like I say, he thought I
Yes.
was too young.
you? All right. And had you met her more formally when you went to the Navy, or are we going to get the Navy behind us and then come back
Yeah.
and
Well,
tell
we
back
got the
on
Navy
you?
We get the
behind
Navy
you.
behind us, then come back to Texas.
All right, let's talk about the Navy.
Well, I went to the Navy in 1942. I was sent to University of Kansas and then to Columbia University,
Yes.
where I got my commission as an ensign in the Navy.
Yes.
And then I was sent to Houston to pick up a ship
Already.
as a commanding officer because they just couldn't find enough. They were putting out ships faster than they were training people.
Yes, how wonderful.
So I started out on this little ship. We had about a crew of about 100 people and 5 officers, and I spent the rest of World War II in the Pacific at Iwo Jima and
Oh, my.
Okinawa.
What
And,
an experience.
it
For
was.
someone that young.
Yes.
And then I got recalled again 2 or 3 years later in the Korean War, and
But you had been home in the
I've
interim?
been home in the interim, yes.
Yes, okay.
And we moved to the Pentagon in Washington for
But we're not married yet.
2 years yet.
Peggy's telling us we're not married yet. Between the
before you get to
between the
Washington.
Navy and Iwo Jima, you came back home. Let's get into that, shall we?
Tell her what you told me the other day. He just
No.
told me this.
When I came back from the Navy in 1947, I went back to Texas Tech,
Okay.
and I finished, took 1 year and finished my degree there. And we got married about a month after, because she was going to Tech at the same time.
Yes.
And that's where our romance resumed, was when I got back from the Navy.
Resumed and started.
Started and resumed both, yes.
Started and
It had
resumed
been
both.
an unrequited love, he said.
Yes, I see.
And then we got married a month after I graduated, and we went to Vanderbilt in Nashville, and where I got my master's.
Okay.
And
Those were the
In what area?
political science.
In political science. All of a sudden now you have transformed yourself from Navy and the other things you had your sights on. What did you begin with at Texas Tech? Was it political science in the
Yes.
back of your mind?
Yes.
And when was
was.
it you went back to Texas Tech and taught?
Yeah.
They called us from
Well, that's
Nashville.
after I came back, finished the master's at Nashville, at Vanderbilt University, where I came back to Texas Tech and started teaching political science.
Oh, that
All
was,
right, we're going to wait right here. We're back in Lubbock.
Yeah.
We're back at Texas Tech, but we need to get her in college. while he was gone and away, what
dear.
did Peggy do at Texas
well,
Tech?
my parents wanted me to go to a girls' school the first year. They did
Yeah.
not want me to go to the co-ed.
Yes.
And I fought against it because everyone I knew was going to Lubbock,
Yes,
Tech.
yes.
But I went to TSCW that first year.
Yes.
Miserable. I'm miserable. I mean, I just didn't. And Mother drove off, and I was just crying on the steps, thinking, "You put me in prison forever." Well, I finally got to go to Tech. When I finished that year, they let me transfer, and this is where we ran into each other. The very day I moved in, my mother and I had driven up with the car loaded.
Yes.
Pulled in front of my dorm, and who should be walking along the sidewalk but Deni? And oh, did he look great? He had this black hair, slim, had his black overcoat from the Navy.
Yes.
Well, I said, "Who is that?" And he turned around and he said, "Can I help you move in?" And I said, "Yes."
Yes.
Just in time. Well, do you know what he just told me this past week? Did you really mean it? I'm not going to tell him if you didn't. I said, "How in the world?" I wondered how it was so coincidental that you were there at that moment, and we started calling and drinking coffee and dating. I said, "How did you happen to be there?" And just the other day he said, "I called around and found out you were moving in that day." And I had not known this.
Wasn't he sneaky? Wasn't he sneaky?
Really, really, really.
Oh, I love that. And what did you major in school?
I majored
Sports?
well, I didn't play that much in school. I was more in music, in chorus and all the things musical. I love that. And mostly, first I started out in business, then I decided I'd go into elementary education, and I got my teaching certificate for elementary teacher certificate.
Yes.
So
That was exciting.
so we dated that whole year, didn't we? And then you were going to go to Nashville, and I was going to go home for the summer, and I did. And you went, and then you called, and everything just
Clicked together.
mushroomed.
Yes, it did. And then now,
Take you back now.
now we have you all together at Vanderbilt, getting ready to come back to Texas Tech, where you're going to be teaching.
That was the most wonderful telephone call from Dr. Davis in Lubbock. Oh, I was so anxious to get back.
How old were you by this time? You were a very
20.
young
I was,
professor.
22 or
I was
3.
22 at that time.
A professor at 22, isn't that something? Ah.
Well, I don't guess he got called professor
Yes.
right off.
Yeah, assistant professor.
But he was,
And tell us about your time at Lubbock teaching political science. How long?
I taught at Texas Tech for about 2.5 years, and then I got recalled in the Korean War
And spent some time there.
and we spent almost 3 years in the Pentagon.
Pentagon.
In
excuse
Washington.
me,
Yes.
but didn't you leave out Kansas?
Well,
That was another
That's true.
degree. Okay, we'll just leave that out. That was so cold and miserable.
well, there was after I did skip a little there. After I left
We've lived
Texas,
everywhere.
after I left Texas Tech, I did go to in 1950. We did go
Lawrence.
to University of Kansas and did my PhD work there.
Lawrence.
All right. And now let's get into this deep political science bit when you first decided to spin off and become a city manager.
At Lawrence.
I did the courses I were taking in Lawrence. The University of Kansas had put in a city manager school. And so at the same time I was working on my PhD, I was taking all of their city manager. And I liked that so much that I went to accepted Owensboro, Kentucky for his first city manager, and and then I stayed there for about 3 years before I came to Grand Prairie.
What brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas, other than C.P. Wagner?
Well, Grand Prairie, Texas was there were
We know a lot
probably
of
Joe
people.
Perkins.
Joe Perkins.
Yes.
All right.
Joe had known a number of people that I knew, and Joe called me and asked me if I'd like to apply.
Yes.
And so I came here, and we had a city council at the time. It was as good a city council as I have ever seen, because they were
At Owen Grove?
no at here.
Oh, here, yeah.
C.R. Sargent was mayor.
Yes.
Joe Perkins, Thomas Mays, who had
Yes.
Mays
Miller.
Line, Dewey Miller,
Dewey Miller.
and James Weems. And it was in 3 years here, we did not have a single vote where there was a major
No.
disagreement, which I couldn't,
Oh, isn't
which I
that
couldn't
that's
believe.
magnificent? And
Now,
this
there was a
was-
lot of argument,
Yes.
but they would
usually
come to
settle.
an agreement on it, and it was just a unanimous vote at all times.
Yes. And you served how long as city manager for the city of Grand Prairie?
3 years.
3 years. And from Grand Prairie, what'd you do next?
That's a
Probably a mistake, but something that was really. I went to Little Rock as city manager.
Yes. Was that a tough one?
Yes.
That was a tough one.
That was when the
That was tough because
integration.
the integration was taking place. The 101st Airborne Division was sent in to enforce the court order in Central High School.
You had a real learning experience
So
there.
I had a learning experience in Little Rock.
Yes.
The people were extremely nice to us, but it was a difficult time. We had the mayor had his office building blown up with dynamite. The FBI caught people on the way to my car to put dynamite under the hood, and but nevertheless, the people were wonderful during all those times, and it had extremely good support throughout the community. But it was this was the time of the White Citizens Council, and the Ku Klux Klan were riding at their highest in the South, and Little Rock was the first test case in the nation of integration of public schools.
Did that end your quest for being a city manager and you moved on to other things, or what happened?
No, I moved on to other
Now
things.
you went on the Great Southwest?
But at that time, Angus Wynn called me.
Okay.
We had helped him at Little Rock, here at Grand Prairie, pardon me. We had worked closely with that group in planning the Great Southwest Corporation on water, sewer, streets, and this type of thing. And he had an architect who was doing his planning called I.M. Pei, who later became one of the most famous architects in the
You
country.
bet.
And he asked me if I would come back and take over as vice president and general manager of Great Southwest Corporation and Six Flags Over Texas.
One of the greatest improvements in the Metroplex.
It turned out to be that way.
Yes, it did,
It was a wonderful experience.
And you stayed with them how long?
Almost 10 years.
Almost 10 years, and when you left there, where did we go?
I went into private development.
Private development. And tell us all of the wonderful things other than Nations Bank and all of the other things that you've built and done.
Well, it was a lot of shopping centers, apartments, office buildings. They were scattered around in about 7 different states.
Yes.
And we spent about 20 years in developing those all over the country. We did 55 major shopping centers in the country. And that was, the main thing was in the shopping center business.
In Grand Prairie, probably your most famous thing then would be the Nations Bank. At that time, it was Republic Bank.
Right.
I noticed that there's a street along there that's named Dean Boulevard, and I'm sure that's for
That-
Dean Dawley.
That little
That
short
must-
street?
Yeah, little short street, but that's
That
good.
must have been.
That's our towering
That's his-
building. Yes, here
That's
in
his
Grand Prairie.
glowing-
Yeah.
Of all the things that you built, whether they were in Grand Prairie or the other 7 states, what is your greatest accomplishment that you believe that you've done in developing?
Oh, I probably enjoyed the bank building as much as
As
anything.
much as anything.
As much as anything else. There were some larger projects, but I enjoyed
Yeah,
I enjoyed the bank building.
And you served on that board, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes.
In fact, I got there were 2 people, Boyd Ridgway and myself, originally got the charter for the Republic Bank, which now is Nations Bank,
Yes, yes,
and started that.
yes. You have been busier than Dallas. Oh, well, what happened then after you finished all of this developing? Was that when everything took a
That's when everything
nosedive?
took a nosedive. That's
Yeah.
correct.
We lost our ears that
Last
year.
year.
That's correct.
Work on your
And at that time, then I taught. I went back to teaching
Anything
college for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then
to
I went
start
to
over,
the
didn't
city
we?
of Arlington Chamber of Commerce to do economic development for the Arlington for about 7 years.
Oh, that is wonderful. And you work with Ted Willis over there and
Yes.
some of the others?
Yes.
Oh, that's
He's a
wonderful.
wonderful
I'm
guy.
going to leave you at Arlington at the economic development there. And let's get to Peg.
You left out one thing I think was kind of important, though. When you were recalled to service, and we lived in Arlington, Virginia, and you were in the Pentagon, what was that?
She's already covered that.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I missed it.
Yeah, you missed that. You were thinking
You
about
didn't
what
say
you were,
Arlington, did you? No.
you were thinking about what you was going to say
I
next.
guess I was
Peg.
thinking about tech.
Yeah, what were you doing in all of this interim? Did you ever work out of the home, or did you just
Following him
homemaking?
around.
Yes.
Well, I tried to when we first married Nashville. He said I quit just before I'd get fired.
But you raised a
Oh, I
wonderful
had-
family.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
2 children to
All
drag
right,
around.
Now, he's named them, but let's talk a little bit about your 2 children and give their names and a little bit more about them and where they are. And if they have children, name them, would you, one more time
Okay.
for our record?
Here in town, we have Vicki, the
Yeah.
one daughter,
Yes.
Vicki Jo Stearman, and she has a little girl. They only have one child. Her husband's Les Stearman.
And the little
The
girl?
baby is Allison Leslie
Yes.
Stearman. Randy lives in Highland Park. He has one little boy. He's divorced. Christopher
All
is
right.
going on 13 in June, right here.
Yes.
She's fixed to be 5 this Saturday. We're giving her a backyard birthday party.
Oh, that is wonderful. Both of them go to Grand Prairie schools?
Well, no,
Some?
not Christopher. Christopher, he goes to St. Mark's,
St. Mark's,
in
right.
Dallas. And
How about your 2 children? Did they go to Grand Prairie school?
yes, they did
them
until
graduate from
until they
Grand
graduated. Then they
Yes.
went off to Randy. They both finished at the University of Texas, Austin.
Yes.
Allie, the little granddaughter's in St. Andrews,
All right.
St. Andrews Episcopal Church School.
Yes.
And Vicki works with IBM, and she's just down in Carrier, so I get to see.
You
I
get to
keep
see
the.
her a
I
lot.
go to the church. I go to the church every Friday and get her for the afternoon. I get her before her nap.
How wonderful.
Then I have the evening meal when she comes by, so Vicki can visit with me because she's so busy. We
Yes.
really don't get to visit much during the week.
All right, we're going to leave you there with Vicki and the kids and get back to our mentor here.
You didn't know you had such an involved
Yes,
story.
that is. And then from economic development in Arlington, you stayed there 10 years?
No, about 8 years.
About 8 years. What was the most famous thing that you felt like you contributed in Arlington?
I would say the ballpark in
The
Arlington.
ballpark. You really hustled
We had
that, didn't you?
we had the responsibility to do the beginning negotiations with the Rangers and
Yes.
and then to help work out the financing, and then the chamber had to was in charge of the election to get
Getting the bond
vote,
issue passed.
Get the bond issue passed.
Yes, and from there, where did you go?
From there, I went to DeSoto.
All right.
And
You're
that's
just
where I
making the
am.
circle here.
We're just going anywhere we can go.
DeSoto is a beautiful little town close by here, which
Closely kept-
very few people have never
Closely kept secret.
been to, but it's got the second highest median family income in Dallas or Tarrant County.
What is your title now and the job you hold with the Economic Foundation or whatever it is in
I'm
DeSoto?
president and CEO of the Economic Development Corporation.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be another big thing, isn't it?
It is.
If he lasts, I don't think he's going to last much longer.
It's funded by a half-cent sales tax. So,
Good.
So it has
Has the momentum.
it has the momentum, and it has the funds about 3 times what Arlington spends on economic development, and probably about 4 or 5
Oh,
times.
and you
what-
love that.
So it gives you the ability to do things.
And you have a good
Good
council
mower.
in DeSoto?
Excellent.
Excellent council.
And the excellent Economic Development Corporation, which actually is my boss.
And do you still play tennis? You beat Mr. Jackson playing tennis. Mr. Jackson has never forgotten. He said, I cannot beat Dean Dawley at tennis. And this was back before he lost his eyesight. And he
You're
was,
kidding.
yes, and he
Well,
just
tell him-
loved playing tennis.
No, I'm right now. I've given up on the tennis. I have a knee that's
Giving you a bad
giving me a
time.
bad time.
Tell him,
now I
John.
get back to walking.
I was just going to say, tell your husband, Georgia used to beat me in our tennis team.
It's a family affair in this
Yes.
tennis business.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Well, what's going to happen in DeSoto, and what do you forecast, and what are you going to do when you grow up?
Well,
We're
I
trying to
have
get to the retiring soon.
sometime I'm going to get to retirement.
Yes.
I signed a 5-year contract last year for extension, so I've at least got 4 more years I've got to
Yes.
Hold in there if
stay
we
in
can.
Yes.
working in DeSoto.
And you still live in Grand Prairie, Texas.
Yes. Yeah.
How about Grand Prairie?
Grand Prairie has made wonderful progress in the last few years.
We have 3 minutes left on this interview, and we want to get back with Peg and let her say how she's like living in Grand
Just-
Prairie. Then I want you to close it out about
Yeah.
Grand Prairie and your forecast.
Okay.
Peg?
Well, it's been a friendly, wonderful place to raise your children. And I guess it's our most favorite place because when we came here, we'd moved so much, and I'd picked up and moved the children so many times, and Vicki was about ready to, no, she was born here, so she wasn't ready. Randy was ready for first grade. And I said to him, we're going to build a home, and this is it. We're not going to move anymore.
And you have a gorgeous home. It's just so
It's
pretty.
an old house. We're having to keep it from falling in, repair it all the time, but we love it.
Wonderful. All right, Mr. Dean, how about Grand Prairie?
Well, I think Grand Prairie is doing a wonderful job now. It's taken a long period of time. I think the council and is very, very good.
It's
I
all
think it's
coming
probably as good
together.
as it's been in many, many years. And I think that
Since you took over as city manager.
right,
All
yeah,
right.
I had it's that good a council now.
Yes.
And I have every reason to believe that the expansion of retail is going to be very, very, very good in the coming years. And the announcement on Target and Home Depot are certainly
Corridor.
two major things. And I hope and I know that the population growth and the retail growth is going to help make Grand Prairie do many things that they've never had the funds to do, and it's going to give them the ability to, I think, grow faster than any other city in Dallas or Tarrant County, probably.
I always admired you and Mr. C.P. Wagner as two of the movers and shakers of the world that caused all of the rest of us to want to volunteer and do whatever we needed to do to promote Grand Prairie, Texas. And I want to publicly thank you for all of the things you have
Thank
done
you.
for our
Well,
city.
how can we repay you
And
for all
thank-
that you and your husband have done?
Thank you all so very much for allowing us this private and personal interview.
Well, it's
and
been-
we're delighted to have
been
had
a
you here.
pleasure.
And thank your children for sharing the time, because I know that you all give a lot of time back
Yeah.
to the community and
Well.
your church for giving you up to do all these other good things. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.